Good evening, councillors, officers of the council, members of the public. Welcome to this Christmas meeting, and I hope everything goes smoothly. And to make sure that it does, I'm going to hand you over to Kate, my chaplain, to give us some good wishes. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you. I'm feeling distinctly underdressed, it has to be said. But I couldn't come to this meeting and not read you something of the Christmas story. So here is Joseph's surprise message from an angel. The angel said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what has been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. "Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel," which means God is with us. God is with us. What better message to have as we get on with the challenges of our day? And I pray that God will be with you as you make the best decisions you can for the people of this borough. Let's pray. God of grace, we give thanks that you care about the ordinary things of life. You care about the conversations that will happen in this room. You care about the decisions and the people they will affect. And so I ask you to be with this council and grant them wisdom and goodwill as they do the best they can for the people of their borough. Amen. Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
Okay, if you can all be seated. Right, just go through the evacuation procedure. Fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once outside of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Please exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure that your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. Apologies received.
Councillor Gazane, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also have apologies from Councillor Wilson, who's hoping to be here shortly.
Filming. All members are requested to turn on their microphone before speaking, to speak clearly into the microphone in front of them, and remember to turn it off when they have finished speaking. A microphone will be provided for members of the public to use who have notified that they wish to speak. The minutes. So we've got two sets of minutes. We've got a set of minutes from the ordinary meeting and a set of minutes from the extraordinary meeting. Is everybody happy that I sign these as true record? Excellent. Interests. Are there any declarations of interest apart from what we've got normal? Councillor Nash.
Yes, I'm at primary school in Bedworth.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It hasn't been updated, but it's in my register of interest. I'm now an employee of Staffline Group plc.
Thank you. Is that all? Right. Okay. Thank you. Announcements. Got a few announcements. So I'll go through them as I've got them wrote down here. Got my first announcement from Councillor Gran. As an announcement he would like to make. Councillor Gran?
Reference to a cabinet meeting in September this year. I apologise for any offence or distress that I caused the leader of the council and Councillor Ian Lloyd. Thank you.
Gran. Councillor Longdon?
I would like to present to the council that silver award on the table. It's been earned, well earned, by all the staff in this council who participate in the Armed Forces Community Covenant and the work that they do. And great play was made at the presentation about that, and we were the only other council that received one was North Warwickshire. So hopefully it's going to be displayed in the foyer where all the staff can see it, because it's theirs really, it's not ours.
Councillor Wilson.
Some of us are wearing Christmas jumpers in support of your appeal. Those of us who were a bit bar humbug have paid a penalty as well. So we have actually raised £155 on our side for your Mayor's appeal tonight. So hopefully that will go some way to meeting the target. The main reason behind the announcement is that this year, myself, Councillor Walmsley, Councillor Llewellyn-Nash and both Councillors Sargent and Councillor Croft thought it would be a nice idea, given it was the 100th anniversary of the ending of the First World War, to go and visit our twin town of Cottbus. As it so happened, we flew out on the International Day of Peace, which was quite apt, I think. We were met by their Deputy Mayor, Dr Marcus Snigerman, and we were shown around the sites of Cottbus, and it was quite surprising how much we have in common with Cottbus. They are still a mining town, we're a former mining town. They even, as you'll see from the gifts that we've brought back, have an affinity with crayfish, which our borough has too. And they are also ex-textiles manufacturers as well. They were quite surprised to hear from us, because they haven't heard from the council in many, many years. But if anything that has happened, regardless of the international situation, we have reaffirmed, both not from ourselves but also, I would hope, on behalf of the council, that whatever happens, our friendship will remain true and strong, and that the door is now open to begin that re-engagement with our twin town, in Cottbus. And I have also given you some details, Mr Mayor, because you are also endeavouring to do the same. So from our trip, we would like to present to you and to the Mayor's Parlour some items from Cottbus, which I think will actually update the twin town setting you've put up in the parlour, Mr Mayor. So there is a map of Cottbus, a replica from 1935. There is a item there which shows the street scene as it is in Cottbus, which has the oldest tower in the town of Cottbus. From the ramparts. You can, if you are brave enough, like myself, Councillor Walmsley and Councillor Croft did, to climb it. It was far harder getting down. The stairs are rather uneven, Mr Mayor. If you want to go and do it, please enjoy it. But there is also some information about Cottbus and the surrounding area, which is both in German and in English for any visitors you may have at the parlour, Mr Mayor. I would encourage people to go and visit Cottbus. It is a lovely town. With the architecture and the various colours of the street scene, baby blues and pinks and yellows. And it makes an interesting contrast to our town centres, Mr Mayor. So the door is open, and I hope we manage to open it a bit further and re-engage in that friendship, Mr Mayor.
Very much appreciated, and I shall get on to putting them up in the parlour as soon as I can. I also have some announcements that I'd like to make. First one is thanks to our council staff and volunteers for the remembrance days that they organised, and also for all the Christmas lights that they've arranged. I think that was absolutely excellent, and the visitors that I had from Leamington, Ulster and Kenilworth also thought that it was absolutely amazing. So top thanks to our staff and volunteers for those. I've also got to thank the George Eliot Fellowship, who have gave a donation of prints, which are now up in the parlour for everybody to see. And I think you'll agree that is a brilliant start to the bicentenary of next year. So that's thanks to the George Eliot Fellowship. To the Gurkha community and on, who have gave us 2 plaques, one to show the friendship of Britain and Nepal, and the other one to show back when they was allowed to claim their pensions and everything, which are already up in on the military wall as you enter the parlour. And my last thanks really go to Nuneaton Lions and Willows, who gave us the who made it possible to put the 2018 poppy display up on the town hall, which is I thought looked absolutely amazing. So there's my announcements. Public participation. Moving on. So, moving on to public participation, we have a statement. Lubs, is that okay?
That's fine, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
At the previous full council meeting, Councillor Phillips made a statement in response to my question. He accused the residents who have opposed the borough plan of putting forward emotional arguments. Many of us who were sat in the public gallery were upset and angered by these comments. Firstly, because it shows that the portfolio holder has not actually read any of our submissions to the borough plan. If he had, he would have certainly seen that people have used evidence and facts to inform their judgments. They had not, as Councillor Phillips suggested, given purely emotional reasons. In the case of the submissions from BRV, RAG, Woodlands, Campaign for Protection of Royal England, BCR, Right and Gardens, etc., BRV have someone, for example, with several decades of experience in the industry who has a vast amount of knowledge in producing these types of documents. I find your comments insulting to him and others who have put in many hours of research and even more hours writing coherent representations. Secondly, it shows how arrogant this council is that they would not even read the arguments, views and concerns put forward by the residents. I wonder if you have read what the developers have said, as many of them have actually opposed sites such as HSG7 and HSG8. Once again, this highlights how out of step you really are with those that you claim to represent. The consultation is as much for you to see the issues as it is for the inspector. Many of us have attended all the meetings and hearings from stage 1 and stage 2 of the borough plan, as well as all the cabinet and full council meetings. The same cannot be said of the current portfolio holder, or indeed the majority of the Labour councillors. Yet, he has the audacity to accuse us of creating emotional responses. I would suggest, with the greatest respect, that he goes away and does his homework and actually looks at what the public have written, rather than merely speculating about what he thinks people may have actually written in their representations. He also commented that the plan has to go ahead. The main reason a plan has to go ahead is because of the failings of this council. If you had maintained a 5-year housing land supply, which is something you are required to do, you could have pulled the plan for review. Instead, what does this council do? It sets an unrealistically high number of houses, takes Coventry's overspill, adding on a few extra houses here and there at every stage of the process, so that you have effectively left themselves without that all-important protection mechanism, which the 5-year housing land supply would have given them, allowing a review and the chance to modify a plan prior to submission. They also have opted for large-scale sites that are so large that they do not have any smaller sites that could pull out at this late stage to reduce the overall numbers in the plan. Craig Tracy MP recently wrote to Councillor Jackson on the plan. I note that at the time of writing no reply has been received, but he himself suggests how the numbers in the plan can be reduced. But I suppose, like the rest of us, he's just emotional, and like the rest of us, his view counts for nothing. If the ruling Labour group had been diligent in their duties instead of negligent, we would not be in the position we are in today with the borough plan. Just to help you out, I have a copy of BRV's representations on the main modification for you to read. You may be unfamiliar with the style of writing, but it basically shows what a detailed report should look like. Councillor Condacor, would you mind, please, would you mind handing that to Councillor Phillips? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you, as this is our last meeting, and Merry Christmas to everybody else in the chamber. First of all, I would like to apologise to Lubs and any other resident who has contributed towards the borough plan. Emotion is an emotive word and misused in debate sometimes. So again, my apologies, and I look forward to reading a copy of the BRV representations. The preparation of the borough plan is a complex and time-consuming business. It requires councils to follow lengthy and exacting processes intended to ensure that whenever possible, whenever proposals come forward are sound, lawful and tailored to the needs of the locality. Thus far, the indications from the examination inspector are that the Council's plan is sound, lawful and meets the needs of the locality. I do not, therefore, accept the suggestion that the Council has in any way failed to be anything other than exacting, precise and focused upon delivering a plan that meets government expectations. And on that note, I would add that the Council is aware that the Government has introduced a standard method of calculating housing need, although I am also aware that they have made it abundantly clear that this is a starting point, not a definitive figure. Government has also been keen to stress in the revised MPPF that the need arising from adjoining areas also has to be taken into account as it is now. The advice I am receiving from officers is that, in all likelihood, little will change in terms of overall housing need, and I refer mainly to the area rather than the Nuneaton and Bedworth, because it looks like there could be a reduction in houses in the Nuneaton and Bedworth. I am also aware that there are transition arrangements in place as the Nuneaton and Bedworth Council submitted their local plan for examination in June 2017. Government guidance now that a plan should be reviewed at least every 5 years, and notwithstanding that this council committed an examination to an early review of the plan. Lastly, to address Craig Tracy's MP letter, I do believe he has had a response on this issue from the leader. However, I am interested to hear Mr Tracy's comments, as they don't appear to chime with those of his government, which I am aware have just undertaken a technical consultation on further changes to national planning policy on changes to planning practice guidance relating to the standard method of assessing local need, policy clarification to housing land supply, the definition of deliverable and appropriate assessment. In other words, this government is in full reverse, having issued guidance which fails to achieve its own stated strategic ambitions to meet the housing needs of the British people. This would suggest that there would be yet further changes to the standard method when planning authorities will need to take notice of. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
A question from Mr Colmeyer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could this council list all consultants, including legal advice, with the amount each one cost Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council regards to the local plan from the 1st of January 2011 up to November 2018 with the final total cost? Cheers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Phillips.
I do have a spreadsheet with the details of the expenditure on consultants since 2011. The total spend over the last 7 years, got your pens ready? Total spend over the last 7 years amounts to £551,546.98. And that will be on the spreadsheet, Carl. I shall arrange for that spreadsheet to be sent to you to review for yourself no later than Friday the 14th of December. However, many of the pieces of work were done jointly with other districts in Warwickshire and Coventry, which meant that those costs were shared with all the other councils as they related to specialist areas such as viability studies where the expertise was not available in-house. These costs would be normal for a small authority such as ours. Other pieces of work were carried out by consultants due to the severe shortage of resources within the policy working team during that period. The costs also cover the costs of examination incurred by the consultants, including the preparation of evidence, meetings with council officers and attendance before the inspector, as well as follow-up work as requested by the inspector. In addition, there are other pieces of work, such as a sustainable appraisal, which the regulation states should be carried out independently. External legal costs incurred amount to £36,656.25 over the same period. The costs relate to the legal advice received in connection with the legality of the sustainability appraisal preparation and for attendance at the examination in public. But you will get a complete breakdown, and I have seen them today. Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask Michelle Concourt to ask her question, please.
Thank you. The improved cuts to the funding of the bistro at Bedworth Civic Hall have not been fully implemented. It seems that the bistro has been allowed to overspend its budget this year and will be provided with an increased budget in the next budget period. In contrast, the cafe and the museum in Nuneaton is run as a franchise, which is successful and reduces the cost to council taxpayers. They are clearly being treated very differently. Please will you explain why the council taxpayers have to subsidise the bistro at the Civic Hall when other more important services are being cut or charged for? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Concourt. Councillor Lloyd, would you like to answer?
Thank you very much. For the coffee bar to remain competitive in the present climate, there are clear economic need to offer what the customer requests. The General Manager needs to have flexibility to react to the changes in the market forces and in the conditions. The point of comparing the museum with the museum coffee bar is unfair, as we are working in a completely different economic circumstances and have more diverse client base. Councillors were aware of the change in offer to what was originally proposed. This issue has been raised before and answered, and the decision to move away from just a coffee bar and coffee and cake bar was taken very early in the planning process, and the budget was adjusted accordingly. And finally, on the issue of franchise, with the kitchen now at the front of the Civic Hall, that could be an option in the future we could look at. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right, now moving on to questions by members. I have notice of 10 questions by members, so we won't be having any supplementary questions. And I'm going to start off with, I would like to invite Councillor Pandare to ask his question, please.
Mayor, on May 8th of this year, Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council signed a statement of a common ground with Echo Limited with the end goal of adding 300 houses at the Hawkesbury Tip site into the borough plan. This was only publicly revealed last month. At the time, there was no leader of the borough council, as former councillor Dennis Harvey did not seek re-election, and there was no portfolio holder in charge of the borough plan, as former councillor Danny Aldington had lost his seat 4 days before. Therefore, who was the person, and I want a name, who gave Catherine Morton authority to sign this statement of common ground with Echo Limited? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Would you like to reply?
Thanks for the question. There's a couple of issues that need addressing before dealing with the substantive elements of the question. The first is that, as a matter of law, Councillor Harvey continued to undertake the role of the leader until annual council on the 16th of May 2018. Secondly, as on 24th of May 2017, Council resolved, amongst other things, as follows, that the Director of Regeneration and Public Protection and the acting head of Planning Policy and Economic Development be given delegated authority to make the necessary amendments to the documents referred in 2.1 of the report, and to prepare and to submit other supporting technical documents in discussion with the portfolio holder for planning and development, and suggest modifications when requested by the planning inspector during examination. Statements of common ground are part of the planning appeal examination process and form part of the evidence submitted by the councils for such events. The government guidance on planning appeals and examination of local plans include the following. Planning appeals. A draft statement of common ground is a written statement containing factual information about the proposal which is the subject of the appeal, that the appellant reasonably considers will not be disputed by the local planning authority. As agreed, an agreed statement of common ground, therefore, is essential to ensure that the evidence considered at a hearing or inquiry focuses on the material differences between the appellant and the local planning authority. It will provide a commonly understood basis for the appellant and the local planning authority and provide context to inform the statements of case and, for an inquiry, the subsequent production of proof of evidence. Let's speed up. Local Plan Examinations 3.17. The Inspector will, where necessary, revise and develop the list of issues and questions on which a written statement is invited from representors. The Inspector may issue a discussion note if necessary to set out the context for these statements. Where appropriate, the Inspector may seek statements of common ground from the parties to help focus the issues. These may be particularly helpful in the examination of technical matters, e.g. needs assessment. However, the fact that the parties may agree on certain issues will not prejudice the Inspector's ability to probe these issues further for his or her satisfaction. In fact, at the start of Stage 2 hearings process, David Spencer wrote to the Council on the 19th of December 2017 as follows. Participants should attempt to reach agreement on factual matters and statistics before the hearing starts, and everyone is encouraged to maintain a dialogue with the Council and other parties in advance of the hearings. Statements of common ground are a useful way of narrowing the issues in dispute. Therefore, assisting the hearings to concentrate on the key issues that truly need public discussion. Statements of common ground will be accepted whenever they become available, but should be submitted by the Friday before the relevant hearing session, if possible, to enable uploading on the website and pre-discussion consideration. It is the role of the Head of Planning to draft and present evidence to examinations and inquiries. Because of the need to be able to respond rapidly to questions posed by the Inspector, the scheme of delegation was put in place. Whenever an issue arose during the course of the examination, the Head of Planning consulted with the portfolio holder or, in his absence, the Leader of the Council. Agreeing statements of common ground is part of the arrangement of this arrangement. Such statements are what they say, statement of facts and points of agreement from other pieces of evidence that the parties have agreed to form part of the evidence to all the other statements made to the local planning inspector. Agreeing the statement of common ground is therefore an essential part of the examination process, and one delegated to both the Director of Regeneration, Planning and Public Protection, now the Director of Planning and Public Protection, and the Acting Head of Planning Policy and Economic Development, now the Head of Planning. Mr Mayor, but to answer the specific question, the Council who gave permission for the statement of common grounds to be signed, etc., the answer is this Council. Council gave authority to Catherine Morton to sign the statement of common ground with Eco Wharf Limited. However, it is worth stating that the site is not being put forward for development by the Council, either as an allocation in the submitted version of the plan, nor as part of the main modifications. So we gave people delegated authority, Councillor, to enter statements of common grounds.
Phillips. Councillor Evans, to ask his question, please.
Soon after I was elected, after communication through officers, Glendale was asked to carry out a number of works at Catherine Ward Hall, which is in my ward. These tasks were very simple. They included taking out a shrub in the back garden, cutting the grass, removing moss off the pavements and cutting back a shrub at the front, outside the complex. I asked for these works to be done around June, and they were only completed a few weeks ago. So could I ask the portfolio holder why it's took Glendale nearly 6 months to complete these simple works, which really shouldn't have took more than 2 to 3 days? Thank you.
Will you reply?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In a nutshell, it hasn't took Glendale 6 months to do these works. The cutting, reducing the shrubs at the site was not seen at the time as a priority by parks officers. This work is normally done in the autumn, and as a consequence, this work was completed only a few weeks ago. Officers should have made you aware of that, so they fell back there. Removal of the shrubs on housing sites will need to be agreed as well by the housing officers. Again, this work that should be done in the autumn period. The moss on the pavement, there is no excuse, should have been undertaken at the time, and this has been taken up with the contractor. Can I remind again, Councillor Evans, that if you follow the complaints procedure and use the system that is available, and I accept that you did in June, then cases like this, and certainly the case of the moss would have been highlighted yet again. What should have been dealt with, you should have really chased up the moss issue further on. That's not an excuse for officers. That's not an excuse for the contractor. It should have been done, and they should have notified you, reference the other parks, being the other parks issues, i.e. the shrubs, etc. Because at the end of the day, you was a new councillor, and I accept that. So I have spoke with officers, and in future they will be, hopefully, informing people. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not having any supplementaries.
It's a motion. Following the question from Councillor Kyle Evans regarding Glendale and Catherine Ward Hall, this council requests the portfolio holder for Arts and Leisure to write a letter of apology to the residents of Catherine Ward Hall to apologise for the council's mishandling and lack of attention for the gardens within the complex over recent years. In addition, this council requests a portfolio holder for Arts and Leisure to write to the 2 ward councillors to outline what steps the council will take to ensure this does not happen again.
Seconder for that, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And speech now, if you permit. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My residents are very, very angry about this. It's been going on now for years. They want change, they want action, and what they want from me and my colleague Seb is they want us to tell them what actions the council are going to take to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So I need to ensure that the portfolio holder writes to both me and Seb to outline what steps his department are going to take to ensure that this doesn't happen again. When I was first invited, I held my surgeries at Catherine Ward Hall, and they're lovely ladies there, they really are. And when they gave me a tour of the complex first, and they took me to the gardens, they really were an eyesore. And then my first surgery, I had an elderly lady come and see me to say that she had an accident on the pavement outside. She slipped over the moss. So that now raises a health and safety question. I asked for those works to be done, and they weren't done. And I think that's a failure of this council and equally your department, Councillor Lloyd. My residents have been really let down by this council. I've apologised to them, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's for me to apologise. You're the portfolio holder for this department. You have overall responsibility, and I think you should take a bit of leadership and write to the residents to apologise. In doing so, I hope that members will support this motion to ensure that we can change the gardens at Catherine Ward Hall in Collycroft and to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Lloyd.
Thank you. Everything. You talk about blame, councillor. You're the 2 ward councillors. I've said I accept about the moss. You say somebody slipped over. I'm just going to look at the legal department and say, have we had a claim or anything reported reference somebody slipping on moss at Catherine Ward Hall? No. Okay. So we've had nothing. You've reported nothing. In actual fact, you say you reported this in June. What a disgrace, councillor. If anybody should be responding to your residents, it should be your 2 ward local ward councillors. Now, at the end of the day, you should have brought it up. You should have followed the process through. Now, I've seen no evidence. I've been given no evidence from the grounds maintenance crew which I've asked for, to say, you can stand there or sit there and shake your head, but at the end of the day, you're the ward councillors. Now, if somebody has slipped on the moss, yeah, the department should be apologising for that. But I wasn't aware of this, councillor. How many times in this chamber have I told you two, and your members opposite, and my own members, if you're having a problem, if you're having any problem whatsoever, I'm all ears. You can come and listen to me. You can come and talk to me. You can do anything. You can phone me up. You can email me. I have had no emails from you to say you've been having a problem. I've had no letters from you saying you've had a problem. I've had no phone calls from Evia to say you've had a problem. If you were having a problem with that department, you should have been flagging it up with me. You haven't. You haven't. So if anybody should be apologising to the residents, the good residents of Catherine Ward Hall, it should be the two local councillors, because you haven't made me aware of it. You say you sent 5 emails. I accept that. You just said 5 times. 5 times you kept saying. 5 times. But they said 5 times. They notified the department. He kept putting his hand up and saying 5 times. All I would say, Mr. Mayor, is at the end of the time, if that is the case, then I will look for those emails, all that correspondence that you have sent, all those issues that you've registered. I will have a look for them. But at the end of the day, councillor, it is down to the local ward councillors. I've told you on numerous occasions. I'm disappointed in you because you did know what the process was. I've told you that many times. You're the disgrace. Now, if there has been an accident and somebody has slipped on that moss, then I will be taking that up with the legal department, asking why. Why we haven't contacted them, why we haven't. You're a disgrace, councillor. You've been told enough times.
Councillor Evans, you've got personal explanation.
Mr. Mayor, he's just said they're not worth it. It's not worth it.
No.
You brought it up.
Councillor
It
Lloyd.
is worth
Councillor
it.
Lloyd. Councillor Wilson, I've got Councillor Concord on next. Councillor Concord, please.
Thank you, councillors have got. I still have exactly the same problem. I do walk around the places like Ryde Avenue. There's moss all over the washing areas. All councillors have these problems. I have got the housing officers, the parks officers, to go round the housing complexes with me to point out the problems. We do quarterly walk-arounds and we write down a list of problems and things do not get fixed. So I think it is very unfair on Councillor Evans being attacked because he's trying the best he can, but it is not his job to actually fix all these problems. It's a portfolio holder's job to actually make sure Glendale do the work they're supposed to and make sure the council's procedures, i.e. you do a walk-around, you find a defect, it's written down, it gets fixed. It is the portfolio holder's responsibility to make sure things happen.
Mr. Mayor, just on the last poll, the older was told. Not one of the councillors has just spoke has told me about them having any problems. So the portfolio doesn't know.
Okay.
Said that he'd heard it all now. I actually think that this chamber's heard it all now from Councillor Lloyd because he says that Councillor Evans is a disgrace. I actually think the response that he gave to Councillor Evans was a total and utter disgrace. To actually say that someone who is trying to help an old lady is a disgrace in doing their job, and Councillor Tandy may laugh from a sedentary position. I don't think it's funny. If that was my nan who had slipped on that moss, who was in that residential home, I would be livid. She may have decided not to take it up. People at that time of life may not decide to take up a claim or report it because they think, and rightly or wrongly, they think, I don't want to cause too much trouble, it's happened, get over it. Some people do that. Some do issue claims. Councillor Lloyd is right in that. But the fact that legal haven't received a claim doesn't mean it hasn't happened and doesn't mean it isn't serious. And the answer that Councillor Lloyd gave was nothing short of smoke and mirrors in trying to deflect the blame from his department. Any other person who is in a position of responsibility as a portfolio holder should have the guts to stand up and be accountable for their department and not try and blame those who are actually trying to help their residents. If that was my resident, I'd be playing the response that you just gave to them on YouTube or video, because they deserve to know what kind of contempt you hold someone in who is actually trying to highlight these issues. That isn't right. That isn't what your job should be, Councillor Lloyd. You should actually be saying, my department got it wrong, I'm sorry. That's the words that should have come out of your mouth, not that you're a disgrace. They should have been, I'm sorry. And the fact that you can't actually do that and say that to those residents shows a great deal that you lack the empathy to deal with the job that you're in. Because if it was one of my members who was in that role, I'd have said, go and see that person, hold your hands up that the department made a mistake, and say that we're very sorry, we will look into the systems that have made this go wrong. You don't deserve that. You pay your rent to us. You deserve a better service. You've said none of that. All you've done is try to deflect the blame.
Okay.
I did say on the moss, and that's what I'm talking about, if somebody slipped over, I will be looking into it. But this is the first I knew about it. That's what I said. That's the first time any councillor has made me aware of it. So I didn't know. So how can I apologise for something that I don't know? Now, I will do the investigation. I will ask for the email stream. I will go to the contact centre. I will do all of that. And that will be done first thing tomorrow. And if it's found the department has fell down, yes, they'll get an apology from the department. They're the people that have let them down. But my point is, and this is where I'm saying a point of explanation, the councillors, neither of them, have made me aware of it. If it was that serious, they should have made me aware of it. That's why I'm angry, not with the residents, not with the department, but with the councillors not making me aware of it. We need to nip these things in the bud, but people have to tell me.
Thanks. Some of the things that Councillor Condacor said there. We've all been on these regular quarterly visits round estates. We identify problems. Things don't get fixed. We've all had these situations. And it's quite bizarre, actually, in the sense that there appears to be a communication problem here. And Councillor Lloyd is accusing Councillor Evans here that they should have gone directly to him. The communication problem seems to be between him and his department, so I suggest the councillor gets a grip of his department. And also, he said about you should use the process, but then suggested they go outside of the process to make him aware of the fact. Well, if the process works, it should work, this should happen. The process clearly isn't working, so change the process. Thank you.
A hard job of this. I'd like to actually say that where the process worked, I don't know if it was last weekend or the weekend before, I received an email from Councillor Golby in regard to a problem. And as a result of being notified about that problem, we were able to take some action in regard to it. It seems to me that a sensible approach, if things are not being resolved at a more junior officer level, that councillors have a choice to raise that with the relevant cabinet member or indeed with our head of paid service or our other executive director to see if things can be accelerated progress in that regard. I think that's a sensible process rather than waiting until full council. If these things were reported in June, that is an awful time gap and delay that could have been actually dealt with more simply. I thank Councillor Golby that she chose that way of dealing with the matter and would advise all councillors that any of my cabinet are quite happy to be contacted directly if there are issues that you need to escalate progress in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anybody else that needs to speak on this? No. Councillor Grant, could you just reread it, please?
Yes, the exact wording. This council requests for portfolio holder for arts and leisure to write a letter of apology to the residents of Catherine Ward Hall, to apologise for the council's mishandling and lack of attention for the gardens within the complex over recent years. In addition, this council requests for portfolio holder for Arts and Leisure to write to the 2 ward councillors to outline what steps the council will take to ensure this does not happen again. I believe I have a right to wrap it up now, don't I, as it were. Well, basically, we've just had a huge squabble about an issue that we should have, that the Borough Council should have solved months ago. So it's a little bit pathetic, the response we got. I apologise for getting personal and rude at a meeting just earlier. So shall we have a New Year's resolution and try and be more courteous to each other in the new year? All of us, I'm happy to sit by that if everyone else is. I think the key thing is all we want is an apology and an explanation for the residents, explaining where it went wrong and how the Borough Council will improve in future to give confidence to the residents who have lived in the area, many of them for a very long time, and who have paid taxes to this authority for a very long time and expect a certain level of service in the place that they live and are otherwise very proud to live in. So that's all we're asking for, and I hope that we'll all support that.
We're going to move to the vote on this. I think it's been debated and there's no more speakers.
For a recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote, yeah.
We are out of time for us to move an amendment, but I believe if we have a recorded vote on a motion that is as simple as saying we will ask the portfolio holder for us in this matter and to report back to the next full council, that will give councillors Gran and Evans, I think, what they're asking for.
Sorry,
because I haven't actually received the motion on a piece of progress, because what Councillor Gran and Evans are requesting is that this be looked at and that if there are any lessons to be learned, we actually learn them. So I'm going to suggest that we ask the portfolio holder for Arts and Leisure to conduct a full investigation into this matter and report back to the next council meeting. I think that is actually a more positive proposal than the one that I haven't seen in writing from Councillors Grant and Evans.
Is it? Yeah. No, not. Right, okay, we're just going to move to the vote on it. Okay, so you want a recorded vote. Okay, so, okay, over to the vote.
Okay, if you could indicate for or against the motion. Councillor Beaumont.
I'm for that.
Councillor Brindley Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane, apologies. Councillor Glass.
Against.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor Shepherd. Oh, sorry, Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley, apologies. Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
Okay, that's carried. Okay. Right, if we can move on to the next question now. And I'd like to invite Councillor Llewellyn Nash to ask her a question, please.
October, the Chancellor announced a £675 million fund for high streets and town centre regeneration as part of the budget. This is to be known as the Future High Streets Fund. HM Treasury says the fund will help invest in improvements to town centre infrastructure, enable housing to be created in town centres, reduce congestion, and to support redevelopment in town centres. The fund is to be administered by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Could I ask the leader if she supports this announcement from the Chancellor? And secondly, will this council consider applying for some of this pot of money?
Someone, would you like to reply?
Well, in Nash, for your question. Any funding that is available to support our town centres would be welcomed. However, there is very little detail surrounding the future High Streets Fund and how the 675 million will be awarded. No criteria is as yet available, and as we all know, the devil is in the detail. Further, 675 million nationally will not go very far. This council will work with its public, private and third sector partners to explore opportunities within Nuneaton and Bedworth to bid for funding. I also note that while no further details on this have been released, we now face a further delay, I understand, in the local government settlement being announced until after the Brexit votes. These delays are most unhelpful.
Mr. Jackson, Councillor.
Following the reply by the Leader of the Council, that this Council requests the Leader of the Council to instruct officers to prepare applications for the future High Streets Fund for each of the town centres, and I hope that will please Councillor Hancock that I've used the plural. I accept that there are few details at the moment, but this Council is at a critical juncture. We finally have the Borough and the County moving forward together with the Transforming Nuneaton Partnership. We have a rough roadmap as to where that may go, and I think we should be using every opportunity for both Nuneaton and for Bedworth, as it happens, that if this funding is available, if the criteria are right, and we can get the application in on time for both town centres, then we should do so, because the position with Transforming Nuneaton is time critical. And we need to be out there and showing to private industry that we are on board and we're doing everything. I think a simple resolution like this tonight, which I would hope would get bipartisan support, actually demonstrates if it is suitable. It's not just words, it is a resolution of the Council that if it's suitable, we can go forward together and get this funding, because the money that is needed for Nuneaton Town Centre stretches into the tens of millions of pounds, if not hundreds of millions of pounds. And Bedworth also needs some of that investment to come in too, which if we demonstrate that Nuneaton and Bedworth is open for business, we can get some of that. Now, I stress that the applications have to be for town centres. I think they should be separate applications, because Nuneaton and Bedworth have completely separate needs and issues in both town centres. We tried with the Mary Porter's pilot to do a joint one. That failed. And a large part of that, from the feedback I had about the Porter's pilots, was that because we tried to do them two together, they're two different entities. And you can't legislate for one and the other at the same time in that regard. Therefore, it should be two separate applications. If Nuneaton gets it, we should cheer. If Bedworth only gets it, I'll still be cheering too, because Bedworth needs that support too. And I'm sure that response would be the same from all of my members on this side, and I hope we would have the same response from the members opposite. So let's not just say in a response we hope to, let's say in a motion which is binding on this council that if it is appropriate and it is suitable, we will do so, because that sends out a clear message that we're open for business, we want to get this deal done, and if the funding is there, let's go get it, because all the more power to our elbow. And I would hope we can pass this motion tonight and demonstrate we are indeed open for business, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Councillor Wilson's motion to cancel tonight, because actually what he's suggesting is precisely what I said in response to the original question. So I'm delighted to second that, Mr Mayor. Nuneaton and Bedworth is open for business. It is the Labour Party that is pushing, as the administration, for every opportunity possible to make sure that Nuneaton and Bedworth grasp opportunities, think big. So I'm delighted we can have cross-party support on what is exactly my answer to the question.
Right, Councillor Evans.
Jackson, it has seconded this motion. Hopefully that's we're going to see a bit more of this, cross-party, talks happening. I wanted to make my speech. I think all of us in this chamber today should celebrate the recent announcements in the government's budget a few months ago. The living wage has been increased to £8.21 an hour, £30 billion for local government towards repairing roads and filling potholes, and of course my personal favourite, the 50p commemorative coin to celebrate Brexit. However, perhaps one of my most important things, I think one of the most important things in the budget was the £675 million fund towards regenerating our high streets. And I say that because at the recent local elections, I think it's fair to say from both sides of the chamber, that's something that's all we were getting on the doorstep, particularly in Bedworth, I have to say. It was second to that of the borough plan. As a Bedworth councillor, I wanted to talk about Bedworth Town Centre. One of my promises at the recent local elections to my constituents in the Slough ward was that I would work with local businesses in Bedworth Town Centre to work with them to see how we can take the town forward, to make it a town sustainable and fit for the future generations. A few months ago, Bedworth councillors and our fantastic local MP, Craig Tracy, got to work. We met with those...
Again, and I've said this before, it's just been said, he should have said Bedworth Conservative councillors, no Bedworth Labour councillors were invited to.
Councillor Evans, can you carry on, please?
Thank you. I believe that's actually a point of order, but we'll leave it at that. But I'm a Bedworth councillor, Damon's a Bedworth councillor, Sep's a Bedworth councillor, Anne's a Bedworth councillor, and Backwant is a Bedworth councillor. We're all Bedworth councillors. I'm not entirely sure what was incorrect about my what I said. Anyway, I'll start again. We got to work. We met with the businesses in the town centre, and we had a really positive discussion about how to take the town centre forward and how it needs to improve. And one of the main things that came out of the meeting amongst those businesses was the perception of the town centre, particularly All Saints Square. I think it has so much potential. All Saints Square. It's overlooked by the church. It's overlooked by the almshouses. I feel so excited by it because I think Bedworth Town Centre has so much opportunity, and we're not jumping on it. We've got to start now because if we don't, we won't have a town centre left which is fit for the next generation. Perhaps if we applied for some of this funding through the ministry, we could get a grant to start work preparing All Saints Square to put the market back outside. Because that's something that people want. That's all we got on the doorstep. You knock doors. It's like 5 minutes. Really? Oh. I'll leave it there. I hope members support it anyway.
Thank you. Lloyd, please.
Councillor Jackson says we're already doing it. It's simple as that. But I think this is going to be one of the rare occasions that we have a unanimous vote in here in favour of something that is sensible. Because I say, we're already doing it. At the end of the day, Mr Mayor, I'm quite happy to vote along with this. And, I'm quite happy to say one of the big issues that I heard on the doorstep when I was canvassing in Bedworth, even though I'm a Nuneaton councillor, was the state of the block paving. I understand we've already sent a letter off to the county to get them to do the block paving in the town centres because it's horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. So we could start by doing something very local, very easy, and getting the county council to do both Nuneaton and Bedworth's block paving. They seem to be doing it everywhere else. But, yes, Mr Mayor, I can support this. In that fact, I go as along. Councillor Jackson has seconded it. I'll move the vote on this because I think we can be unanimous on it. So I'll move the vote, Mr Mayor, and a recorded vote.
Right. Okay, so we need a seconder to move to the vote, but I have also got Councillor Concord that wanted to speak. So can we... Julie seconded it. Right, okay. So let's move to the vote then. Okay, let's move to the vote. Okay, we don't need to vote for it then. That's done. Brilliant. Thank you. So, moving up. Okay, we've got to vote on the motion then. Right, okay, so let's move to the vote on the motion. Okay, so I need to take a vote on whether to take the vote then. So all those in favour that I take the vote? Okay, yeah, me too. Right. Oh, Councillor Concord, you're voting against? Yes, I wanted to speak. Okay, so that's moved. So now we're doing the recorded vote. So over to Simone for that, please.
Okay. So for or against the motion, Councillor Beaumont. I think it's for. Councillor Brindley Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazanes, apologies. Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancocks.
For.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor.
No speaking, no vote.
Abstained. Yeah. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandare. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley, apologies. Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Okay, that's carried. Brilliant. Right, so if we move on with questions, I would like to invite Councillor Croft to ask his question, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Will the Leader of the Council please commit to reverse the Council's decision to scrap a market in the Nuneaton Town Centre on Christmas Eve and thereby support our hard-pressed market traders? Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Croft, for your question. Traders were consulted about extra markets during December, with Christmas Eve being amongst the options. But there was insufficient interest to make running the market on this date commercially viable. To break even and cover operating costs, it was necessary to hire out at least 50 stalls at £62 per stall. Of the 55 traders consulted, only 10 expressed an interest in trading on the Christmas Eve, requiring a total of just 16 stalls. As in previous years, we will be running a number of extra market days in the run-up to Christmas. On Thursday the 20th and Friday the 21st of December, meaning that the market will run on the week before Christmas from Wednesday the 19th of December through to Saturday the 22nd of December. Whilst we are happy to work with traders to try and accommodate their requests for additional markets, under the current financial climate, I would suggest that it is unreasonable to expect us to commit to doing so at a significant financial loss.
Right, we're out of time for questions now. So we've got question 5. All the questions that have been sent in will get a reply within a week. So I hope that that's satisfactory for the time to reply. So moving on with the business tonight, special urgency decisions. I'm informed that there has been no decision taken by the Cabinet under the special urgency rule. Cabinet report. Report by the Leader of the Council is attached. I invite the Leader of the Council, Julie Jackson, to present her report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As usual, myself or members of the Cabinet are more than happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Okay, so over to members. Councillor Condacor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Looking at page 58, we have the garden waste collection key decision. which is on 2AI, as this be Councillor Shepherd's domain. We had a decision, and people understand why we have to make a charge, but people are absolutely livid that the charge is £40 for garden waste collections, when the actual cost of collecting is £20 at the moment. And people want to know why, well, people want to know why we haven't had this called in by the Tories, but people also want to know is why aren't we looking at a lower charge and why aren't we looking at pay-as-you-go? Because a lot of people only put the green waste bin out once or twice a year. If they're active composters, they've only got a little bit of stuff that can't compost. And so this £40 a year is a really retrograde step. This borough earns £140 a week less than people in Rugby. And so I'd ask the portfolio holder, why haven't we considered a lower charge and pay-as-you-go?
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to reply to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All options were discussed. The authorities around us operating, including Tory councils, Rugby, Tamworth, Lichfield, etc., all charged the £40. Our current charges for our extra bins are... Councillor Condicle, please don't shake your head at me when I'm trying to answer you. Our extra bin charges are, at the moment, are £40, so we've brought it in line with there. Tory austerity has led to the cuts that we're having to make. The cuts to local government funding, as you know yourself, the money we've got found this year are over £1 million. So we're having to make difficult decisions. By using it as an opt-in service, at least we are giving residents a choice for this decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, the update the leader's given us about the combined authority on page 59. The meeting on the 9th of November, item 11, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Jackson, there was an item at that board meeting, item 11, about bus services in the West Midlands. I just wondered if you raised the issue about Stagecoach withdrawing the 57 bus service, which is going to affect all of us from both Nuneaton and Bedworth, because obviously if we get rid of that service, it's going to stop people being able to get to Prologis Park, which is a major employer in this borough. And the second question I've got is, I've gone through the minutes of the meeting on the 14th of September, which are here. It seems, Councillor Jackson, that you didn't attend that meeting. Now, we have perfectly legitimate reasons as to why we can't attend the meetings. That's fine. But what's annoyed me a bit is that there's 4 people who sit around you who you could have sent as substitutes, and that hasn't happened. And it's not the first occasion. The 20th of November, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Glass didn't attend, but could have sent Councillor Hancock's as a substitute. The 21st of September, the Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee, Councillor Tandy did not attend, but could have sent Councillor Beaumont as a substitute. We're sending £20,000 to the West Midlands Combined Authority each year. I see very little benefit, with the exception that we get a voice on those meetings and we get to stand up for our side of the region. If that's not happening, it kind of begs the question, what's the point?
Mr Jackson.
Meeting I did not attend. You will have seen draft minutes of that meeting, Councillor Evans. They were corrected at the subsequent meeting. I did attend that meeting. I actually was slightly late to that meeting because a train had derailed at Coleshill and it took me forever to get to Birmingham. I corrected that and the minutes will show, the amended minutes, that I was there. In regard to the number 57 bus route, Nuneaton and Bedworth is a non-constituent member. It is not part of West Midlands Transport Authority. Warwickshire County Council should be the place that you should be asking your question in regard to the number 57 bus route, because actually the West Midlands Combined Authority is not the route for this council to raise transport queries. I think they were the issues that you raised. In regard to other attendances, everyone in this council chamber, on occasions, will have reasons why they can't attend at the last-minute meetings. If we have prior notice of that, we will always ask someone to go in our place. I can only speak in regard to the one I attended that I clearly did. Thank you for your question, Councillor Evans.
Councillor Tromans.
I'd like to look at the Cabinet report. If we can look at page 56 and item 2AI about the green bins. A whole bunch of issues that people might want to raise on this, not least of which why in the run-up to the last election Labour were putting out leaflets saying that the Tories were going to put a cost on, a charge on if they were elected, but Labour would make sure there were no charges applied. I won't ask that one to the leader or to the portfolio holder just right off the cuff now, because they're obviously going to have to think quite hard on their feet to get out of that one. I'll leave that to others. But there are some more important issues here, and the green bins is an absolutely perfect example of this. I mean, this council is in, and I would remind everyone, is in no overall control. But the Labour group seem to be in denial about this. They're making changes.
Can you take a statement, Councillor Tromans? Councillor Jackson.
Clearly questions, not making statements, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tromans, can you just cut straight to the question, please?
I have a preamble to read and a question at the end of it, Mr Mayor.
No, this is open for questions, so I really need the question. I don't need a statement in front of the question. I just need questions, because I have got a number of speakers.
Well, if you punctuate it without full stops, it is a question. It's just a very long sentence. It's a short one. I will do no more than 30 seconds.
Okay, then.
Situation here where very drastic changes are being made to services in year. There shouldn't be these kind of drastic in-year cuts. If there is an urgent necessity, if something has changed, then prudently reserves should be used to maintain that service until there has been proper consultation with the public, and as we're in no overall control, and this would be a punitively expensive decision to reverse, like some of the other ones, like binding us into contracts on the climate. I'm asking scorched earth policy of making these decisions quickly now before they lose control. Why, if something untoward has all of a sudden come up mid-year in their budget?
Now the answer, please. Thank you.
I'll sit down.
Councillor Tromans. Right. As I said, we've got a number of speakers here to ask questions. Councillor Wilson, you're next, please.
Are them done individually or separately?
Sort of straight together, or
I'll see if the portfolio holders can garden waste collections. It does apparently, from the information I've been given, the controlling group have been working on this since June, so it does take a long time to try and work out how to reverse the damage. Could the portfolio holder for Central Services and Refuse explain why they went to the election with literature saying we will not charge, and then straight after being put back into power in June, begin the wheels in motion to actually charge residents for the green bin waste, basically misleading, some may say lying to the public. I also have further questions to the portfolio holder about why they have done why they have not considered any equality impact assessment as to how this will impact the most vulnerable and ill-able to afford this charge in our borough. Also to ask the portfolio holder why she is willing to see council taxpayers have to see an increase potentially in what they pay to the county council, because they will have to look at how they deal with disposing the increased waste we will be generating by putting it into the black bin and the green bin. And then finally to ask the leader of the council, Mr Mayor, under the West Midlands Combined Authority, I am aware that the Combined Authority is looking at increasing the membership charge to non-constituent authorities. Could she inform this council what representations she has made about that proposed charge, and whether she'll be authorising the continued membership and therefore payment of that charge? Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Can I ask you to answer first, and then Councillor Jackson, if you could answer, please.
Labour budget. The two comments I've got is Tory austerity, I'm afraid. is why we've had to do what we've done. In terms of the quality assessment, that has been done. It was been done by Craig Dickin. I'm sure if you speak to the officers in the morning, they'll provide you with a copy of that assessment. But it has been done. And in terms of working with county, we are working with county. I've got a meeting with them next week in terms of speaking around the composting element and composting workshops, actually, that was brought to the committee by Councillor Condacourt. So we are working with county in terms of looking at how we can mitigate any concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. That an increase in non-constituent fees has been muted, and indeed I have spoken directly to Andy Street, the Mayor of the West Midlands Combined Authority, to say very clearly that this authority will need to be absolutely sure that residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth are getting value for money from membership of that authority. We are getting information from the West Midlands Combined Authority in this regard, but Councillor Wilson, I will send you a briefing note that has been prepared that sets out the benefits we are already receiving as an authority from our membership of the West Midlands Combined Authority. And I trust that I will be able to do that in the next week. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Just before answer to mine. Thank you.
Just the question.
Maybe you need to explain why there was no consultation and why reserves weren't used given to maintain the service until the end of the financial year, given this is an on the hoof in the middle of the financial year.
And Councillor Jackson.
Some kind of parallel universe often. Local government has had 60% cut in its revenue support grant. Councils up... Mr Mayor, I didn't interrupt. Councillor Tromans. Mr Mayor, councils up and down the country are having to make very, very difficult decisions. Look at Northamptonshire, a Conservative controlled council that is in a really, really difficult position. This authority did not want to go down this route, but Mr Mayor, we have to look at the realities of this. Central government isn't announcing the local government settlement, which it should have done tomorrow. That's my understanding. So we've got to wait yet longer. Cuts in our grants. China, the plastic costs of recycling have escalated, not just affecting this council, but councils up and down the country. 2/3 of councils have now introduced charges for green waste collection. It isn't a statutory service, it is something we have chosen to provide. And up until now, I'm happy that this council has been able to provide that free to people. And last year we introduced a charge for the second green bill. And sadly, Mr Mayor, we're having to make decisions that if we had the appropriate funding from central government, we would not. So I'd ask Councillor Tremans, with respect, to go and talk to his Member of Parliament, Marcus Jones, and ask him to get an urgent finance settlement for local government and to get more money on the table so that we can do the things we really want to do. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Point of personal explanation, Mr Mayor.
Personal explanation.
Yeah, thank you. My question clear. Why did you not use reserves to continue this until the end of the financial year? Nothing, Councillor, has changed from central government within this financial year. You got us to all vote on a budget. Nothing's...
Councillor Jackson, do you want to answer that question?
Mr Mayor, and then somehow gets a question in it. Mr Mayor, we look at finances sensibly. We have investments. We invest to create funding for this authority. Councils up and down the country, I think it was 36 I read on the BBC today, maybe 39, have dipped into their reserves to such an extent...
Can I have an answer to my question, not another political speech?
Right. We're going to move on with this. Councillor Guttridge.
Compliments of the season to you all, by the way. Green bins. It saddens me that the controlling group yet again cannot manage the borough finances. If we'd managed Gresham Road and the climbing tower, we wouldn't be in this mess. The residents in the borough take...
Councillor Jackson, Councillor Guttridge, can you turn your mic off, please? Thank you.
To yourself, this is a question and answer session. This is not debate. This is not a statement session.
Yeah, Councillor Guttridge, can you move straight to the question, please? Because I have got a number of people here, so I'm just going to go straight for the questions.
It takes me a bit of time. There we go. Many residents in the borough take pride in the gardens and are on a fixed income and low incomes. And now you have brought in a green tax of £40, harsh on the messy households of this borough. Hinkley only charged £24, and we have to sign up and pay in one lump sum in January for the green bin to be collected in February. Is there another black hole in the finances as this is being rushed through? I have so many minutes, thank you. I would like to ask why it's being rushed through and why the residents can't pay direct debit monthly. As you said in the Labour's election manifesto, we will not charge for the green bins.
Councillor,
one comment.
Is it no? I'm just doing questions. So can we move to Councillor Shepherd? Sorry, I'm losing the will to live. Councillor Shepherd.
I was slightly confused by Councillor Guttridge's question. However, it is an opt-in service for residents. We're not saying you've got to pay for your green bin. It is an opt-in service for the residents. How we've done it. And we know it's a valued service for the residents. But with the government's austerity programme, we found ourselves in the position of either charging residents for keeping the service or stopping it altogether.
Councillor Elliott, you indicated, can you move straight to the question, please?
Its attention is being given to green bins when in the first
mass crisis
and lack of funding to all councils. Okay.
Councillor Glass, can move straight to the question, please.
Yes, an explanation if you wish, or whatever it may be, Chair. My name's been mentioned about the CA and my lack of attendance. There's people who know me or don't know me know I've gone through a rather bad health period over the last couple of months, and I've handed in my resignation to the CA because if I believe I'm going to do a job, I'm going to do the job. And on occasions, Councillor Hancock has stood in my place, and on occasions he hasn't had enough time in order to make an arrangement for himself. Agrees with us.
Thank you, Councillor Glass. Councillor Condico, straight to the question, please.
You discussed the general fund budget. The market rent for Christmas Eve, which is a working day, have gone up from £36 to £62, raising £3,000. I think they've lost to explain why the changes put to the budget when you set the meeting on the 31st of October, because £3,000 is minimal.
I referred to a previous councillor earlier in the meeting.
My question to the leader of the council could actually cover a number of things, but I'm going to refer to page 59 and towards the top of the page, B, paragraph 4. Does the leader of the council agree with me that the philosophy of this Labour-controlled council and its proactive nature in leading has encouraged other people to follow us in what we do? And I give that particular instance is modular housing, and if I also add to that emergency accommodation, where we lead, other people follow. And I've followed it very closely myself, where Coventry City Council have recently announced that they're also looking into increasing how you can do modular housing and providing emergency accommodation. Does the leader of the council agree with me?
Yes, I do agree. It's we are trailblazing. We have got
a particular reputation now, and across the country, people are... What's so funny about that? What is so funny about good things happening in this council that you lot have to laugh? What is so funny? Come on, you had to laugh.
Council.
Yeah. Up and down the country, people are getting on the bandwagon with what we've done, particularly with modular housing. I did say at the last meeting about that, or it might have been a cabinet meeting, and the Metropolitan Councils getting on that bandwagon may cause us problems in the future. We might not be able to move as quickly as we could, because they've got more money than us to do those sort of work. But yes, we are. And certainly as far as homelessness goes, we are another trailblazer in that respect, in what we're doing for homeless people. Go on, laugh now. Go on.
Councillor Long.
Their attitudes. So
okay.
These people
Councillor Longdon.
These people are destitute, Mr. Mayor. Want to follow where we lead.
I'll get straight to the question. On it's about the green bins as well. So it could be taken as a bin issue, or it could be taken as a finance issue. But on your election bump that you put out to everybody, it says Labour protected green bin collections this year. We've committed to free garden waste collection in our budget. And then you went and changed the budget. So why did you not see the money disappearing? We haven't had any changes in the finances. So how can you commit to a budget and then a few months later have to redo that budget? Is it financial ineptitude? How did you not see it coming that you needed to change the finances so much that you've had to go to this £40 charge on the green bins?
Question.
It was actually at the last cabinet meeting, or the one before, where we actually discussed the state of the general fund, and you will have noted the significant overspending on the recycling contract. Not an issue solely for Nuneaton and Bedworth, an issue that councils up and down the country have faced, and another issue that councils in the general fund are facing is an increase in homelessness, and the costs of that we have to meet from the general fund. They are two significant changes in year to our budget, and ones that simply we have to deal with. This council has never set a budget that is illegal. We have always set appropriate budgets. We will continue to be good stewards of the money of the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth. We will act in their best interests at all times. But we cannot just say all of these increased costs come at no price. They do. I'd love the government to fully fund the massive increase in homelessness and the massive increase in recycling costs for councils up and down the country. And I'd say to Councillor Golby, any influence you have with Marcus Jones, MP, your MP, and indeed I think Mr Tracy has been mentioned by Bedworth councillors, and I'm sure Mr. Smith, Councillor Smith will be talking to Mr. Pawsey MP in regard to this. Local government has been really badly affected by the government's austerity programme, and that austerity programme doesn't seem to be coming to an end anytime soon. It is shocking to see the increase in homelessness, and costs like this simply have to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I've got Councillor Brown now.
Question of Councillor J. Shepherd regarding the garden waste collection. We've already heard that leaflets were being issued in houses around the borough from the controlling group at the moment, which pledged that there would be no charges for green waste collection. And in June, planning started to implement the changes to charge people. So I would just like to ask, on what date did you first become aware, between May and June, that this was likely to be taking place? Give us a date, please. I'll accept it in writing at a later date if you don't know it.
Thank you.
Where I'm due from, I will speak to officers and get back to them with a written response.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
with regards to the modular housing on page 59, so my question is to Councillor Longden, who I believe is the portfolio holder. I actually want to congratulate you. I believe the press release that I read, unless I'm misread it, I believe you won a national award for this. So yeah, congratulations, and I think it's really good. The ones that I've seen on Ashington Road in Bedworth, to officers in your department to look at a piece of derelict land in my ward behind the Cricketers Arms pub, which is partly owned by the council, about using this to build some of these modular housing, because my residents actually want houses being built there.
I've only seen so far garage sites, derelict garage sites, or where we've knocked the garages down. Is that one of those? Right. So that will be in the programme. Exactly when, what the timing will be, I don't know. I haven't got a programme of works yet. That's being worked on. And as soon as it does, I'll make sure that somebody lets you know that it's going to happen.
Councillor Longden. Councillor Condacourt.
On page 59, we have local development scheme, which most people know as Borough Plan. That meeting discussed the timetable for the Borough Plan going forward over the next few months, and the consultation ended on Monday. Also on Monday, you released the annual monitoring report, which contains all sorts of useful information. Was that a mistake, and did you know when you actually set the timetable for the Borough Plan that you'd actually release the annual monitoring report full of data on the same afternoon the consultation closed?
Okay, thank you. Right, no more questions, so we'll move on with business. Next item is review of polling districts and polling places and polling stations. Members will have received an addendum clarifying that there is recommendations on the summary sheet that are for council approval. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations as set out in the summary sheet of the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to do this. Include consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Wilson.
The recommendations, and I think I understand most of what they're saying, because obviously it's a legal requirement, but I do have a slight concern based on what I've had feedback from residents, particularly at the county council elections last year, which caused a bit of mayhem with some of the polling stations there. I think we need to tighten this recommendation up slightly, because I think we need to have a proper consultation with residents. Not expensive, it could be something put on the website, a banner saying we're having a consultation on polling stations, would you like to take part, put it on Twitter, whatever, Facebook. But there were concerns expressed by a number of residents to me. And I think I would like to move an amendment, and I hope it would be accepted by the leader, and it would state that the electoral registration, this is at point 1, the electoral registration officer will carry out a review of polling stations, polling places and polling stations, and insert by holding consultation, insert with residents and with relevant ward/county councillors, MPs and other stakeholders, because it doesn't make clear where it says other stakeholders whether that actually includes members of the public. It could just be the facilities that we use, like the schools, like pubs, like shopland next to the side, that sort of thing, churches, they could be. But also I think residents need to have a say in where the polling stations go. They may come up with some good suggestions, they may not, I don't know. But especially with the expansion of housing, and we have our arguments on that, but there are large swathes now, particularly in St Nicholas and Weddington, where we need to give some more consideration about where polling stations go. Do we put more polling stations in elsewhere? It has a cost, I accept, but we need to consider these issues to make sure that we maintain that access to democracy. So I would hope the leader would accept the my amendment to the recommendation, because I had some quite irate residents actually on the phone to me, particularly at county council election time. It was even Portia Close, which is quite a small area, if you know Whitestone. It's a small area with a little van, but we added, I think it was something in the region of 300 to 400 extra. I'm looking at Debbie and she's nodding at me. 300 to 400 extra voters there, and there wasn't anywhere to park. People were finding they couldn't get in, they couldn't get out of their houses because of where we put it. Could we find an alternative solution? I don't know. but the residents might. And I think that is something that we should actually take on board and say to residents, it's your vote, where do you think we should go and vote? I hope she'll accept the amendment, Mr Mayor.
I'll second it, Mr Mayor.
Oh, Julie, did you second it? No. Councillor Golby seconding it, yeah? Okay. Yeah, I've got a number of speakers again. Councillor Condacor first.
For the borough, because if you look at the annual monitoring report, which was released on Monday, just after the borough plan consultation was closed, there's been a phenomenal amount of houses built in Wellington St Nicholas up to March 31st. Since March 31st, there's even more. So there's probably well over 1,000 houses suddenly appeared to the north of Nuneaton and no extra polling stations. Also, it's changing the electorate, because the electorate in Wellington St Nicholas is getting massive and massive as those who leaflet and canvass the area. So does this become a waste of time if we need to do a boundary review in a year's time, or even 6 months' time if we get a borough plan? So we do need to tie the two together, because to actually review the polling stations and then almost immediately do a boundary review, because we've shoved so much housing in the north of the borough, we do need to think about the waste of effort and actually where we're going with democracy, because particularly because the housing has been so disproportionate in one area, rather than being equally spread out and people taking fair shares, it has really distorted the borough. And so in places like Wellington, we have, you can lose the election in Wellington on 1,200 votes because the electorate has got so massive. So we do need to look at...
Councillor Jackson, you got a point of order.
Yes, Mr 60, that this is nothing, this report is nothing to do with the Boundary Commission.
Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor, can you move on?
Yeah, I'm just winding up at the same time. And the final point is, some of the polling stations like Portia Close have diesel generators, which are really annoying. And I think if we are actually imposing all the parking hassles and all the traffic hassles, we shouldn't also have a diesel generator going from 6 a.m. in the morning to 11 at night. So I do think we need to look at the impact of these and actually try and make them as friendly as possible.
More speakers on. I just want to make this clear. This is about the consultation. So we can't do anything here anyway until the consultation comes out. Number of speakers again. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favour of the amendment that Councillor Wilson has proposed. Before the meeting, when the agenda came out, I put on me and Seb's Facebook group about if anyone had any issues, and there wasn't any issues in the Slough ward, but I think people should still have the chance. It doesn't have to be a high key thing like the borough plan consultation. Just something. I mean, there's been a recent survey about the budget, and I think about the future corporate aims of the council. So it's so easy. I think we should be able to do, and I hope the Labour group get behind it. I mean, the only issue that I'm aware of in Bedworth is with regards to people on Acacia Crescent and Hazel Grove who have to go and vote at the Civic Hall when there's a polling station opposite that road. On Johnson Road, Pine Tree Centre, that could be, a shared polling station between the Bede ward and the Poplar ward. So, I completely support Councillor Wilson's recommendation, and like I say, I hope the Labour group get behind it, because we're all in favour of letting people have a say to some extent if it's not about the borough plan. But yeah, cheers.
Dan, but you have got the right to reply. So do you want to do that after another speaker? Yeah? Okay. Councillor Hancock, please.
I do welcome this review, and there's certainly anomalies in regards to some polling stations, as Councillor Evans has just said. I live opposite Eddie Miller Court. I have to go up into the town to vote, yet there's a voting station in Eddie Miller. So there's these odd anomalies that happen. But Mr Mayor, I mentioned earlier about where we lead, other people follow, and I've got to say, I'm quite proud of the work that this authority, Nuneaton and Bedworth, has done over the years to try and make, wherever possible, that polling stations are accessible to all people, regardless of their disability or anything else. And in the main, we have managed to do that. There's been some difficult areas, and I'm not aware of the one that's just been spoken, but clearly that one is one that can be looked at a review. But generally speaking, certainly in Bedworth, we've managed to get rid of pretty much, I think, all of the porter cabin type things which had difficult access to. We may still have the one No, we haven't got the one down Black Horse Road anymore. So I think in Bedworth we've probably got rid of all the porta cabins, and everywhere's accessible. But you know, the whole idea of this is to review it. I've got areas within my ward that have got difficult access, and it's shown that they don't turn out to vote because of that lack of access. And the consultation, certainly with councillors, as far as myself goes, I will be making those representations, and that's the whole point of what's here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. I think it's a really good idea that we have the review. And just to take up Councillor Hancock's on his point, there are porta cabins in Bedworth still, Almston Road for one. And we do have issues in Bedworth Heath where Hospital Lane and the Bede Village is not particularly well served by a polling station. They have to travel a long way down to the Cross Keys area to vote from there, whereas we've got a situation where the Cross Keys area polling station is only a couple of hundred yards from the one in Heath Avenue. So there are these anomalies. I welcome the idea of having a review, and I thoroughly support the idea of this amendment. Thank you.
We've got problems that we want more polling stations put somewhere, and I've already spoke to Debbie about one in Kingswood. Councillor Jackson, you have the right to reply.
Thank you. I think everybody in this council chamber is going to agree that residents are an incredibly important group of people that we need to consult. And I think actually the recommendations as printed will allow us to do exactly that, Mr. Mayor, because it says, and other stakeholders, and the biggest stakeholder in this authority are our residents. So I don't think there's any difference between what Councillor Wilson's amendment is saying and what I'm saying. Of course, it would be ludicrous to think that we would not be consulting our residents. They are our other stakeholders. Mr. Mayor, I would hope that Councillor Wilson would accept that we are speaking about exactly the same thing and that our officers will be having consultation with residents, councillors, MPs, other stakeholders. Of course we will. It will be considered by the internal scrutiny panel, and there will be a full report back to this council. And again, Mr. Mayor, I'm really pleased that we were one of the first councils to introduce public speaking. So yet another opportunity for residents of our borough, if they want to come and make representation, not only during the consultation period, but actually when a decision, when the review is brought back, is going to be made. Mr. Mayor, I'd ask Councillor Wilson, we're saying exactly the same thing here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so now go and move to the vote.
Vote, please.
On your recorded votes. On the amendment. Okay, Simone, over to you.
If you could indicate for or against the amendment, please.
Mr. Mayor, can we be very, very clear? Can you read out exactly what the amendment is?
Okay, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Wilson, can you read that again, please?
Is up and incorporates what Councillor Jackson is saying, just for the sake of clarification. So it would say, and the only recommendation which is being changed is 1, the electoral registration officer will carry out a review of polling districts, polling places and polling stations. That is all the same as the recommendation. Then insert, by holding, that's inserting 2 words, consultation, then inserting with residents, and then leaving the rest of the recommendation saying with relevant ward / county councillors / MPs and other stakeholders. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Brindley Edwards, Councillor Brown, Councillor Croft, Councillor Duffin, Councillor Doherty, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Evans, Councillor Gazane's apologies, Councillor Glass, Councillor Golby, Councillor Gran, Councillor Gutteridge, Councillor Hancock,
4,
Councillor Hocking, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Condacor, Councillor Llewellyn-Nash, Councillor Lloyd, Councillor Longdon, Councillor Pandare, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Pomfret, Councillor Rudkin, Councillor A. Sargent, Councillor J. Sargent, Councillor J. Shepherd, Councillor T. Shepherd, Councillor Smith, Councillor Tandy, Councillor Tromans, Councillor Walmsley's apologies. Councillor Watkins.
4.
Councillor Wilson. That's carried.
Okay, so that's carried, but we've still got to take a vote on the motion. So 4. Any against? Sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, right, moving on. Recommendations from Cabinet or other committees. Licensing Committee, Gambling Act 2005, Statement of Licensing Policy. Councillor Tracy Shepherd, will you move the recommendations set out on the agenda?
So move the recommendation as printed on page 65. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any member wish to speak? Brilliant. Move to the vote. All those in favour? Okay. Just to double check, there's nobody against? Brilliant. Okay. Excellent. Cabinet General Fund, Housing Revenue Account, Quarterly Budget, Monitoring Report, Quarter 2, 2018-19 Update. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations set out in the agenda? Thank you. Does any member wish to speak?
Using always A's and B's, but we've got a new version which increases our borrowing to 20.7, sorry, our capital programme to 20.7 million at a time when we're going through a very uncertain couple of weeks with Britex, etc. And I think some of this extra expenditure is very worthy, but I think we should actually look at some of the other things on the programme to see if we should defer some of them, like the purchase of empty properties and the purchase of investment properties, till after Britex has been completed, at least what's happening in March. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Except that there is some market volatility with regard to what is going on. And I'm quite reassured, actually, that Craig Pugh and Simone are looking at that, because we just had the recent report which went to Cabinet, which says how we are monitoring the potential impacts which we're going to face. But there is a lot in this additional capital programme which we can't talk about, but is extremely good news for the borough, and anything that would endanger that would not have my support at all, and the support of the rest of this group. So I wholeheartedly support the capital programme and reiterate that we now need to move forward with these items at pace. I think those were the exact words that Councillor Jackson used at the meeting, moving forward at pace. I think with this item we are at 1, but we'll be monitoring and making sure that these are done to time and to budget and in the interests of the residents. So it is vitally important that we actually get on with the job that residents elected us to do, and hopefully we'll start to see some changes as quickly as we possibly can. So the sooner we vote on this, the sooner we can actually start making that difference to residents. Mr Mayor.
Echo exactly what Councillor Wilson said. I think there has been delays for far too long with some of this, and it is about time that action was taken and improvements were made. I also think it's a fair point to raise. We are in uncertain times, but this council is talking about very long-term investments here. We are not day-to-day speculators or money market players. These are very long-term investments, most of them, and particularly the one Councillor Wilson referred to. And so I think those concerns are very much minimised, and I will certainly be voting in favour of this.
Anybody else wishes to speak? No? Okay, brilliant. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour? Against? We'll make sure that's recorded, yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, moving on. Cabinet Treasury Management 2018-19 mid-year review. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations set out in the agenda?
And in so doing, I hope I express the thanks of the whole council for the excellent work that our finance team do, Craig Pugh, Simone and the team. I'm pleased to recommend this. If there are any questions, we will do our best to answer them.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Longden. Yeah. So, open to the floor now, Councillor Concord.
Thank you. This was discussed, but unfortunately I didn't put down to speak on the Treasury report because the Treasury reports are always so well done. Craig is such a superb officer and everything is very careful, very cautious in what we do. But I was alarmed when the leader actually suggested maybe we should put another £1 million in the property fund because it does so well. The whole point and why Craig is such a good officer is he's very cautious. And to put 3 million rather than 2 million in the property fund very close together, particularly at the time of Brit exit coming in and uncertainty over the next couple of months, would be reckless. And I think people need to understand that actually these property investments are a really good idea in the long term, but you have to do a little bit at a time, because to actually invest a large amount of money just before a period of uncertainty could mean you invest £1 million and you lose £300,000 or £400,000. So I was here in 2008 when I was sat at the Cabinet meeting and I suggested we didn't put the money into high-risk LE plus loans, which happened to be in Iceland. I didn't know they were in Iceland, but I was the only person to advise this council not to take out those Icelandic investments. And now, I don't know whether it's a good or bad time to invest, but I do know we need to be careful, particularly with the Bank of England suggesting there could be a 30% crash in property prices under certain scenarios, that we shouldn't, in the next couple of weeks, invest in property. It's all about being careful, and this is why on the previous item, the thing we can't talk about, I'm massively in favour of. The thing I wanted some caution on is investing in properties to let out, those sort of areas where I think we need to take a couple of months just to be careful and to see where the market's going. When we've got some certainty, I'm sure things will get better, but it's what point you come from. Thank you.
Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. May. This is the Director of NABSEL. I actually think that the work that we are doing in investing in buy-to-let properties and now NABSEL gas is actually very worthwhile work that we are doing. We are bringing in, by converting capital money, which is safe because at the end of the day we have the bricks and mortar there, we're bringing in excess of £450,000 into our revenue budget, which is sustaining vital services which our residents across the borough depend on. And I think that is actually one of the more safer investments actually that this council has. And I know that it is prudently invested in those properties, because I have sat there and with Councillor Jackson and Councillor Lloyd and to be fair to Councillor Harvey before, and sat there and asked those questions of Simone and of Dawn to make sure we are doing that. We have had the risk registers, we have looked at all the other reporting tools that we need to do. We are doing that as NABSEL, so I'm quite confident in the issues that we are looking at. If I am reading the report correctly on page 102, which is the property investment that Councillor Condacor is referring to, and what Councillor Jackson referred to at the Cabinet report, is under CCLA Local Authority Property Fund, £2 million. Now, not applicable is in the deposit period and maturity date. So if I'm reading that correctly, and I'm sure Simone will give me an indication, that means that we can withdraw our money without too much notice, if that's the way that it's reading on here. In which case the report should actually be amended on that front. I think the report does need some clarification on that front because it doesn't read like that. So I think that needs picking up going forward, how that's reported, because anyone looking at that, myself included, would read that as we can access that alongside the other notice accounts which we have there, because they're grouped in the same area as the notice accounts. But having said that, the money that is invested, Simone has, and Craig have certified that this is a prudent approach to take. We may have our disagreements. We have strong disagreements and long disagreements over where the money in the budget goes, but how the money is spent, the actual mechanics of how the money is spent, we actually have quite widespread agreement that our officers do a tremendous job in doing that. It's where the money gets put that annoys us on this side of the chamber and annoys residents too. But in how it is spent, I'm quite sure that we are one of the stronger performing councils in that regard. But if Simone and the officers can take that point back, because that is slightly misleading in the report, I think that needs to be taken up. But I'm happy to endorse the report, subject to that amendment being made in the future, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else wish to speak? No, excellent. Right, let's take the vote then. Oh, sorry, sorry, I'm rushing there. Go on, Councillor Jackson.
Misrations to the Treasury Management report was agreed on the hoof. A question was asked by myself in regard to the CCLA fund, but no changes were made. I think this represents a council that is on a solid financial footing, is administered well. We do thank our finance officers, and I think that's been said by all political parties in the room tonight, and I hope we can move and vote on this, Mr. Mayor, unanimously. And end in a spirit, Mr. Mayor, I will also say Merry Christmas to all those people who do celebrate Christmas, and trust that we all have a safe New Year. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Yes, we'll record your vote, Councillor Connicorth. Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying with us today. That concludes today's business. I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you once again for the gifts and for the kind donation. Very much appreciated. Now going back to the poll, if anybody wishes to come, I'm sure I can rustle up a cup of tea or coffee or